once again, the US has positioned itself in opposition to the international community. On Wednesday, the US vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. This marks the fourth time the US has used its veto power on this issue, even as the death toll in Gaza now stands at around 44,000. The draft, put forward by the Security Council's 10 non-permanent members, demanded an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire, as well as the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. Among the 15 members of the Security Council, the US was the sole opposing vote. This US action once again raises the question: how many more innocent lives in Gaza must be lost to awaken Washington's conscience? Now, nearly 44,000 people have been killed in Gaza, and the US still does not hesitate to use its veto. Nearly all of Gaza's 2.4 million residents have been displaced by the war, creating an unmeasurable humanitarian crisis. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, the US is expected to shoulder the responsibility of maintaining global peace and stability. However, its actions, marked by the abuse of veto power, blatantly contradict global efforts to promote a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The US approach to the Palestine-Israel conflict has left it isolated on the international stage. Even the US media outlet, the New York Times, has acknowledged that this underlines Washington's diplomatic isolation on the issue. France and the UK's UN ambassadors have also openly expressed dissatisfaction with the US veto. Nicolas de Rivière, France's UN representative, stated unequivocally, "There is an obvious urgency to implement an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. This is the only way to guarantee the protection of all civilians and the massive and unhindered delivery of emergency aid." Liu Xinchen, executive director of the China Arab Research Institute of Ningxia University, told the Global Times that there is no doubt that the US unwavering support for Israel has not only caused domestic divisions, but also created rifts with its allies on the international stage, leaving the US increasingly isolated in the UN. Washington repeatedly claims to defend human rights, yet it appears indifferent to the situation in Gaza. While the international community agrees on the need for the unconditional release of all hostages and an immediate ceasefire, the US continues to insist on preconditions for a ceasefire, even as Israel's military operations in Gaza have long exceeded the scope of rescuing hostages. This stance effectively gives the green light to prolong the war and condone the continued killing. The US repeated vetoes are not only the greatest obstacle to achieving a ceasefire, but also the root cause of the dysfunction within the UN Security Council. As the world's most authoritative international body, the Security Council are expected to speak on behalf of the global community and push for resolutions that pressure both parties to end the conflict. However, the US abuse of veto power has left the Council unable to act effectively. This has become a recurring issue that not only severely undermines the credibility and effectiveness of the UN, but also further erodes global confidence in the US. In the face of death, poverty, and the profound humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the US continues to turn a blind eye to the lives of these people. In the future, when history reflects on this period, questions will inevitably arise. Where are the human rights and humanitarian values that the US so often proclaims? Is it really that Palestinian lives don't matter? In this tragedy, the US has not only forfeited its leadership and credibility, but also plunged its international image into ruin.